Nigel Farage, thank you for joining us today on GBN tonight, St George's Day. Happy St George's Day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, isn't it wonderful? It's the English Saints' Day, and I mean, all my adult life, I've been out to extraordinary big St George's Day lunches and dinners, and I've spoken at a few of them, and it's really been funny because sort of political class. You can say you're a Welsh nationalist, that's absolutely fine. Scottish nationalist, absolutely fine. Irish nationalist, well, not quite so fine, but okay. English, you know. And of course, the Labour Party have had this total aversion to the St George's flag. And we all remember the famous, infamous Emily Thornberry tweet on the day of the Rochester by-election. It's a few years ago.
Which you were fighting with UKIP back then.
Yeah, and we won it on the day.
We won on the day.
Yeah, Mark Reckless won the seat on the day. And it's as if to the North London intellectuals, I mean, the very thought of Englishness is almost abhorrent.
She tweeted a picture of the flag hanging outside a building with a white van in front of it.
Yeah, a hard-working.
And she never said what she meant, but it seemed to be a kind of.
Well, we knew
it seemed to be. Oh dear.
Oh yeah. Oh, look at these awful people. I mean, gosh, he's got a van. I mean, hasn't he got an EV? It was North London snobbery. That was what came across.
But that was back in 2013, 2014.
2014, that was. And now, of course, where we as a political party, and we're doing very well in Wales and we're growing in Scotland, but we are unashamed of the English side of our party. And you get the feeling that what's happening today in Downing Street with the flag of St George and all the rest of it, and Starmer saying he wants to reclaim the flag, basically the Labour Party and the Prime Minister are dancing to Reform's tune. That is what is going on.
That's certainly where the political battle right now in politics is, between what you're saying and what Labour are trying to say back to you, I think. That's where the debate is. I think Tories are already running to catch up. That's how it seems to me.
I think Morgan McSweeney says, oh my goodness me, this reform lot are really starting to hurt us.
So don't you think, so last night in number 10, the Prime Minister said, didn't he, that the battle for the flag is important. He referred to the riots in Southport and talked about the St George's flag. He said, we need to wrench it out of the hands of those who wish to divide this nation and reclaim it for good. What did he mean by that? Why is he linking fighting with the English flag? His
obsession with the so-called far right comes through in almost everything he says and does. And here it is again. Here it is again. And he's really saying, well, the flag is just the preserve of skinheads, and we can't allow that. But
he's trying to say we're all English, but we don't want it to allow those groups to have it for themselves.
Too late, Prime Minister. Too late. Yeah. We're there already. We're there already. We're out and proud as English, and as I say, we got Welsh and Scottish and the other things that make up our party. They are scared. They know that there is a patriotic, old Labour, what we used to call working class, in the Midlands and the north of England, who are increasingly attracted by what Reform has to say. They are in full panic mode. Morgan McSweeney is trying to pivot the Labour Party in a different position.
He's, of course, the PM's chief aide. Some say that people who voted Remain are not as patriotic as Leavers. What do you say to that?
Well, I never understood how you could be patriotic and at the same time be happy to hand away chunks of self-control to a bunch of old men who you can't vote for in Brussels. I could never understand it. There are other, to be fair, there are those that would say, no, we believe it was in our national interest, and if at any point we wanted to change it, we could. But let's put it this way. A lot of people who were believers in the European project, and it was never more than 20% of the population, all right? But a lot of it was in Westminster and the political class. A lot of those who believed in the European Union, believed in global governance, didn't really believe in us as a country. And by definition, I think they were unpatriotic. I wouldn't apply that to the next 30-odd% of the population.
That made your 50%.
Who thought our interests were better served being in than out.
Yeah.
But at the core of it, basically Edward Heath and others believed that the existence of nation states had caused World War I and World War II. And therefore, if you effectively get rid of the nation state, we'll live in peace forever. That is what they believed. What they misunderstood was a much more important philosophical point, which is this. Nation states, provided they're democratic, don't go to war with each other. There is not one single example of a mature democracy fighting another. So what we should have pushed after 1945 was democracy being strong within nations and all being part of a trade club and all the rest of it, but not to surrender national control.
Well, that's where the common market started in
And
the
that's why,
mid-70s through to about 1998 or 1990.
Yeah, and it wasn't really till Maastricht that we fully understood
Yeah.
that we're going to get a new flag and a new anthem and all the rest of it.
Now, moving on to other things to do with Reform UK. Overnight, we've learned that Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, was recorded saying that one way or another, he wants to make sure Reform and the Conservatives do not compete at the next general election. He wants to bring together this coalition of support. You're leader of Reform UK. Do you agree with him?
If I agreed with him, I think my supporters would be revolted.
In revolt and revolted.
I mean, absolutely, yeah, both. I agree. I mean, you know, we had 14 years of the Conservative Party, taxes the highest since 1947, the state growing, the civil service growing, mass immigration at levels even Tony Blair couldn't have dreamt of. I mean, they let people down by every single measure. And when it comes to Brexit, everything from fishing to financial services feels actually they didn't get anything like what they expected.
They were blown off course by COVID, by the Ukraine war,
they didn't,
by Brexit, which wasn't their policy.
No,
you know all this.
They didn't believe in it. They didn't believe in it. They used it in 2019 as a political opportunity. They didn't believe in it. And that's why.
But his point is, why not unite the right to get your policies, broadly your policies, with the Tories into power and keep Labour out? Are you willing to sacrifice that?
As you will see in the next few weeks. And as I predicted, in the early hours of the 5th of July in Clacton, I said, we've dealt with the Conservative Party, we're now coming for Labour. We are coming for Labour. Those Labour voters, some of whom did vote Conservative in 2019, will never do so again.
Just for clarity, yes or no, would you do a deal with Robert Jenrick or the Tories?
I would only do a deal with people who I could trust. I don't trust them.
Any of them?
I don't
James
trust
Cleverly, any other future leader?
No, I don't trust them politically.
No deal. Now, just looking at your policies, Nigel Farage, you want to nationalise British Steel, you support the unions, you want to lift tax-free allowances, you criticise net zero. Are you the Liberal Democrats in disguise? Because you're trying to appeal to different parts of the country with different policies.
No, we're just common sense. And
you're doing different things for different audiences, like Lib Dems do.
Well, no. Richard Tice and I went to the plant in Scunthorpe. We were told very clearly there were 3 days left to save primary steel manufacture in Britain. We stood outside the plant, we made a call to nationalise immediately, otherwise the Chinese owners were only too happy to see it closed down. And the government very much reacted to what we'd done. It is a vital national strategic asset. And when it comes to taxation numbers, everybody condemned us at the last election for our contract with the people. The sums didn't add up. Today, the OBR have produced debt figures showing the country's in much deeper trouble and that Rachel Reeves is 25 billion out already. Interestingly, in the subnotes, quantitative easing, which we talked about, if you remember, in our contract with the people, last year, the Bank of England lost 36 billion on quantitative easing. We put 35 in our contract. So I tell you what, people criticise us, condemn us. We've actually been right on a lot of things.
But you're confusing politically. You're going left and right, tacking this way and that, aren't you?
No, there is something called the national interest.
Okay.
And I want Britain to reindustrialise. I worked for 22 years in the metals industry, right? I worked in London. My customers were people that made copper wire, people that had lead rolling mills. These were people I dealt with. They've nearly all closed down, Chris. And now we're almost at the end of being a heavy manufacturing country, mostly because of our obsession with net zero and energy prices. And if the government has to intervene in the short term to save some of these industries so we can look for better pastures in the future, that makes sense.
Despite the costs, £700,000 a day lost.
If you believe that figure. I don't believe that figure. Okay.
And overnight, Nigel Farage, there are reports that the US want to allow Russia to hang on to the lands that it has won in Ukraine. Is that the right approach? It feels like appeasement.
Wars end in one of two ways, don't they, generally? One is one side gets annihilated, surrenders and accepts pretty much whatever they're given, or the other is you have a negotiated peace settlement. You know, you could argue that the civil war in Northern Ireland was ended by both sides making some degree of concessions. I don't think this plan really is acceptable because it just rewards Putin too much. I want to see peace,
But not at any price.
but not at any price.
And just finally, Ursula von der Leyen's in town this week, meeting with the PM possibly Thursday. Should we do a deal on fish to ensure the security of this country and work more closely with the European Union on security?
Now, your question is completely misplaced.
But that's what's on the table.
I'm really appalled. I'm the only member of Parliament that has a financial stake in the commercial fishing industry, which I do.
What's your stake?
I own a commercial fishing boat.
Do you?
I do. I do. I don't run it myself. I'm rather too busy, but I do. So I am heavily invested in both the commercial and recreational side of angling in this country.
Is it an angling boat or a fishing boat that catches
It's
fish?
a commercial fishing boat.
And how much fish do you land a year?
Well, I won't go any further than what I've gone because you know.
What's it called, the boat?
I'm not going into any of that because it just wouldn't be fair.
Okay.
But I do own a boat. I have a skipper that runs that boat, and I'm not making any money on it, I can promise you.
No.
The rules and regulations put upon our small commercial fleet since Brexit are worse than they were as members of the European Union. The whole thing is a disaster, and to think we're going to surrender even more, well, I can tell you the environmental damage that is being done to our seabeds and fish stocks in the Eastern English Channel has worsened since Brexit considerably. And the very thought that Starmer might sign us up for an EU military pact is totally unacceptable at every level. A European wing of NATO with nation states, let's sit round the table and talk about it. Anything to do with the European Union, and the answer must be no.
And of course, the Pope's funeral is this weekend, and you said in a post on Twitter that you met him.
So the Pope, Francis, he'd not been long the Pope, and he was invited to a sitting of the European Parliament in Strasbourg. And of course, they were all terribly excited because they imagined the Pope was going to be very pro-EU and all the rest of it. And so the six of us who were group leaders lined up to meet the Pope. And we were introduced by the President of the Parliament, a German called Schulz. And they were very annoyed because the Pope spent longer talking to me than he spent talking to anybody. And we had really quite a good laugh and an exchange of views. He then got up and gave a speech in the Parliament where he said, "Why do you move every month from Brussels to Strasbourg? Why have you got all these big buildings? Why do you all pay yourself so much money?" It was wonderful. I loved every minute of it.
It was a Farage-iste, a Brexiteer almost.
So after that, I actually had a figurine of the Pope on my desk in my office in the European Parliament.
Well, Nigel Farage, thank you for joining us today on GBN Tonight. And once again, happy St George's Day.